Welcome to The Explainer. I am so thrilled to have you here today, mostly because we are looking at a truly defining moment in modern history. I want you to imagine a shock so massive that it permanently rewrites the rules of the global economy. It changes the way we drive, alters how we build cars, and completely shifts the balance of global power. Well, today, we're unpacking the 1973 oil crisis. We're going to trace the geopolitical shockwaves and really dig into the lasting legacy of this event. And you know what's incredible about this? The acute phase of this crisis lasted for only a brief 5 months, yet its fingerprints are quite literally all over the world we live in right now.
Okay, let's dive right into this. Our source material highlights a really crucial turning point here. It notes that this was, quote, one of the first times oil was used as a geopolitical weapon. See, up until 1973, oil was generally just viewed as a commodity, right? It was fuel. It was the abundant, flowing lifeblood of the whole post-World War II economic boom. But this crisis, it flipped the script entirely. It showed the world that whoever controls the energy supply holds an immensely powerful lever over global politics. Energy wasn't just a market good anymore. It became a strategic tool that could bring massive economies to a grinding halt.
Section 1. The geopolitical spark.
Now, what's really fascinating here is the timeline itself. The actual crisis window strictly runs from October 1973 to March 1974. That is just 5 months. I mean, really think about that for a second. In less than half a year, the entire global energy landscape was turned completely upside down. And the crucial takeaway here, as noted in our sources, is that while the embargo was officially lifted in March of '74, those dangerously high prices, they stayed permanently. The genie was officially out of the bottle, and there was absolutely no going back to the way things were before October 1973.
So let's look closely at the trigger for this specific 5-month window. According to the data, the catalyst was the Yom Kippur War. During this conflict, the United States made the decision to provide support for Israel, and this geopolitical maneuver in the Middle East was the direct spark. It is a textbook example, a really perfect example actually, of how a regional conflict, when combined with superpower alliances, can instantly ripple outward and create a massive global shockwave.
And let's see how this builds. The Arab members of the Organization of Arab Petroleum Exporting Countries, or OPEC, they retaliated against that U.S. support for Israel. But they didn't just issue diplomatic statements. Actually, they went way beyond that. They took unprecedented economic action. First, they instituted severe production cuts, physically choking off the amount of oil coming out of the ground. Second, and honestly much more drastically, they implemented a complete export ban to targeted nations. They literally turned off the tap.
Section 2. The embargo and price shock.
Roughly $3. Prior to October 1973, this was the baseline cost for a whole barrel of oil. Just $3. This was the absolute bedrock of the cheap oil era. I mean, Western economies, manufacturing sectors, transportation networks, and everyday consumer lifestyles, they were all entirely built on the assumption that oil would just sit at this incredibly cheap, easily accessible baseline forever.
And this brilliantly illustrates the sheer scale of the shock. $12 a barrel. The price of oil quadrupled almost overnight. I mean, imagine waking up tomorrow and the cost of gasoline, the cost to transport food to your grocery store, the cost to manufacture basic everyday goods. Imagine all of those underlying energy costs quadrupling in a matter of weeks. There's no other way to say it. It was a complete fracturing of the bedrock cost of energy, and it absolutely shell-shocked the global economic system.
Section 3. Gas shortages and stagflation. Of course, the immediate impact in the West manifested as severe gas shortages and widespread rationing. Everyday people were suddenly waiting in lines that stretched for blocks and blocks just to fill up their cars, often running completely out of gas before they even reached the pump. So the crucial point we have to remember is that this wasn't just, numbers on a stock ticker. This was real, widespread panic and severe economic pain felt by families and businesses everywhere. Governments were literally forced to implement strict rationing systems just to manage the sheer chaos at the pumps.
And the economic damage went far deeper than the local gas station. It triggered something economists honestly thought was nearly impossible: stagflation. If you're not familiar, this is a painful economic state combining high inflation with an economic recession. See, usually when the economy slows down in a recession, prices drop. But because the cost of energy, which is the fundamental building block of the economy, had just quadrupled, prices skyrocketed at the exact same time that businesses were failing and people were losing their jobs. It was an absolute economic nightmare for Western nations, and it was directly triggered by this oil shock.
Section 4. The government scramble.
Our sources highlight a really fascinating three-step reaction from governments trying to get a handle on this. Step 1, the implementation of the 55 miles per hour speed limit. Now, a lot of people think this was about safety, but originally it was strictly about fuel efficiency. Cars simply burn less gas at 55 miles per hour. Step 2 involved sweeping conservation measures. Governments were literally begging citizens to turn down their thermostats and turn off their lights to save power. And Step 3 was Project Independence. This was a massive government-driven initiative aimed at drastically boosting domestic energy production. Also, the nation would never be caught this vulnerable ever again.
Section 5. The Lasting Energy Legacy. The 1973 crisis marked the definitive, undeniable death of the era of cheap oil. That whole mindset of endless, carefree consumption, it was gone for good. And in its place, we saw the rise of energy efficiency. The world was abruptly woken up to the harsh reality of finite resources, forcing a massive global pivot toward doing more with less energy. It completely rewired industrial priorities from top to bottom.
And you can still see that legacy all around you today. Those fuel efficiency standards that dictate how modern vehicles are manufactured, yeah, they trace their roots right back to this very shock. Furthermore, this event massively strengthened the geopolitical power of OPEC, firmly proving their ability to dictate global market terms. And of course, those long-term pushes for energy independence, they remain a dominant talking point in political and economic circles to this very day. The world just fundamentally changed how it thought about energy.
Which leaves us with a pretty provocative question, I think. Did the 1973 crisis truly teach us how to achieve energy independence? I mean, sure, we set speed limits, we built more efficient cars, and we launched these massive government projects. But as you look at the global energy landscape today, have we fully insulated ourselves from the kind of shock waves we saw 50 years ago? It's a really fascinating question to ponder, and I think it proves just how vital it is to understand these historical turning points. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and as always, keep learning.